Good day! So there is a new old X-Men cartoon series out there that everyone's talking about. So I figure I should talk about the old X-Men series. And with it, I will talk about the first cartoon appearance of that other fantastic X-Men team known as X-Factor. So alright, let's go!
Yeah! So, we start off at the Jack Kirby reference Federal Storage Depot, where the lovable superhero Iceman breaks into the place and freezes all the guards! Wait, what? So naturally, this gets the attention of his old buddies, the X-Men! So Professor Xavier, Cyclops, Wolverine, and Beast go to the storage depot to pay Iceman a little visit where they compassionately kidnap him and try to force some answers out of him. Right? Cause what the hell is he doing? But things get very heated because, man, like, Iceman is a total hothead. No pun intended. But he's through with Xavier. He's through with the X-Men. Even though he still wears the X-Men suit because, realistically, that is a pretty snazzy little uniform. But he's burned every bridge. He's locker room poison. So he doesn't answer any questions. He basically gives Xavier the "you're not my real dad" speech. So the X-Men put him in a zero gravity kind of prison cell thing, I guess, to make him think about what he's done. Eventually, Beast, being the lovable teddy bear that he is, was finally able to get some answers out of Iceman. And so Iceman tells him of his flashback story. Iceman and his superpowered girlfriend, Lorna Dane, both left the X-Men and tried to live a normal life, right? They didn't want to be in the fight anymore. Iceman became an accountant. Kind of like Mr. Incredible, I guess, in a way, except for the fact that Iceman wanted to do this, where Mr. Incredible was forced to do it, but nonetheless. One day, Lorna was kidnapped, and Iceman believes that the government was behind the kidnapping her. His clues led him to that storage depot, and boom, you're caught up. Hooray! Suddenly, our young mutant friend Jubilee feels a kinship with Iceman because she too feels like she's been babied by Xavier. The fact that she's a young teenager, impulsive, and incredibly inexperienced to be part of a mutant militia, fighting like the absolute dangers you can't even comprehend. So she frees Iceman from his suspension, literally and figuratively, I guess, and they both go to try to find Lorna. Meanwhile, back to the Federal Warehouse, where Iceman and Jubilee are easily captured by, don't know who, some people who are wearing X's on their uniform. Is this an X-Men copycat team? Holy jeez! We can't have copycats, so of course, the X-Men go to battle this obvious copyright infringement. Oh, and to save Jubilee too, I guess. But with the X-Men illegally breaking into the Federal Warehouse, the X-Copycats attack! And man, it is so awesome! Mutant versus mutant! Iceman versus Strongman! Jubilee versus Quicksilver! Beast versus Wolfsbane! Wolverine versus Multiple Man! And Cyclops versus Havok! With that fight, being as awesome as it is at a complete standstill. Their powers are not affecting one another for some crazy reason, man, but who cares because every other fight is freaking awesome! Biff, bam, boom, yeah! As these X-Copycats are kind of getting the upper hand, the X-Men switch fight partners and then easily defeat their foes. Hooray! Copyright infringement? Guilty! Suddenly, the leader of this copycat team, Forge, meets up with Professor Xavier to give him the 411 on what the hell is going on around here. Turns out this is a team of mutants called X-Factor, and they're run by the federal government. They fought the X-Men because A, they've trespassed on federal property, but B, they used it as a training session, which, on one hand is really smart, but on the other hand, you got Wolverine and his berserker mode. He could have killed someone, man. Also, and I guess most importantly, Iceman finds Lorna, and he is shocked. Shocked, I tell you, about her story. So apparently she wasn't really kidnapped. She faked the whole kidnapping just so she can get away from Bobby so she can join the X-Factor, which sounds really excessive, right? Like, Iceman did not want to get back into the mutant fights, right? He was completely dead set against it. Lorna wanted to get back into it. She believed that with great power comes great responsibility. So she had to fake a kidnapping in order to join a team instead of just essentially breaking up with Iceman. You know, she could have left like a Dear John letter or like, a phone call or something, but no, fake government kidnapping. Not only that, but she is in love with X Factor's team leader, Havok, which is devastating to Iceman, right? Like, oh my god, you do all this just to have your heart melted. Oi! So now that he's completely devastated, he still doesn't want to join the mutant fights, he decides to go back to his super exciting life of accounting and leave all that mutant stuff behind. And with that, that is the end of this Uncanny Tale.
Yeah, X Factor! I gotta say, man, like, I was a really big X-Men comics fan in the 90s, so to see, like, a really obscure reference like X Factor in this cartoon, it's a thing of beauty! Well, X Factor is not obscure in the comic books, but outside of the comic books, like, absolutely! This episode's the only time outside of the comics you ever seen X Factor. So whatever limited interaction we have this team, man, I'll take it. Even though for the most part, half the team didn't even talk and just kind of stood around getting punched in the face, but still, awesome to see them. And of course, we have that classic superhero cliche. Whenever two superhero teams meet for the first time under mysterious circumstances, they need to throw hands. And of course it has to be like that, right? Because if they all had a cup of coffee and talked about good times, that's not entertaining. So face punching it is! The rest of the episode was pretty good too, I guess, which, really was the bulk of the episode of Iceman trying to find Lorna. So it's kind of funny that she had to go through a fake government kidnapping just so she can join a government-sponsored team, like, jeez. Well, I guess if you put it like that, it sounds kind of logical. But she did all that just because she couldn't tell Iceman that she wanted to go back and fight with mutants. And it's like she didn't even think that he might have tried to find her after she was, allegedly kidnapped? Not good plans, Lorna, not good plans. But that's storytelling for you, right? Like, there needed to be some kind of a conflict. If she just broke up to him face to face and then walked away, well, I guess we wouldn't have had this episode at all. And so yeah, Iceman becoming an accountant, that's a very noble job, it's all hip and all that. But this dude has superpowers, right? If he doesn't want to be part of a mutant militant group, man, there are other things he can do and still use his powers. Like, what if he became a firefighter instead of an accountant? Like, how easy would it be for him to put out a fire, Just encase the entire burning building in ice and, let the melting take care of itself. But nay, taxes, audits. This was like the one and only time that Iceman showed up in this animated series. It was really cool to see him all the time in Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, having fun, enjoying life, and then seeing him completely crushed in this episode, man, that was, kind of dark, But that's showbiz, kid. But if you haven't seen this episode before, I suggest you do, because it's pretty cool. Pun intended. And now, let us go see behind the scenes what we can find Oodaboots, X Factor, and all that stuff over here.
So yeah, the X Factor. How did this team come to be? Well, for that, we need to start off with the first mutant team, the X-Men. They first appeared in, X-Men #1 in 1963. They were doing pretty awesome, but as happens in comics, the lineup needs to change. New blood, new sales. So a whole bunch of new X-Men characters were introduced in Giant Size X-Men #1 in 1975. At the end of that story, Charles Xavier asked, damn, what am I gonna do with 13 X-Men? That's too many mutants! So with that, some of the original X-Men stayed, some left to join other teams, but eventually the 5 original X-Men figured, you know what, man, we should get the band back together, And so they did! They created a new team called X Factor, which really, that is a fantastic name for an X-Men themed team. And they debuted in X Factor #1 in 1986. So there was a story called the Muir Island Saga, which started in Uncanny X-Men number 278 in 1991. On a personal note, that was the issue I started collecting Uncanny X-Men with, so I really love that story. Within that 5-comic issue story, you had the X-Men, X-Factor, and other mutants join forces to stop the villainous Shadow King. That story concluded in X-Factor number 70 in 1991, where yet again, at the end of it, Charles Xavier asked, "Holy jeez, what am I gonna do with all of these X-Men?" The answer is to shake up every X-Men type team. The original X-Factor members rejoined the X-Men on either the Gold Strike Force or the Blue Strike Force team, leaving the X-Factor completely vacant. So what are you gonna do with a team that has no members in it, eh? You call the government, I guess. The federal government wanted a government-sponsored team of mutants, which is kind of neat, it's like mutant-human relations, in a military kind of team, And the new lineup for X-Factor debuted in X-Factor number 71 in 1991. So with that team, you had Valerie Cooper. She was the government liaison for the team, making sure everything is on the up and all that kind of stuff, that the mutants are looking good, this and that. Also bureaucracy, because, come on, right? The rest of the team consisted of Havok, Strong Guy, Polaris, Multiple Man, Wolfsbane, and Quicksilver, with some really awesome 90s inspired uniforms, man. Honestly, I thought this team looked so damn cool when they first came out. Kinda cartoony, but still, kinda neat. Well, 90s fashion neat, I guess. Eventually, Valerie Cooper would leave her government liaison position, and the mutant known as Forge would take her place. And with that, you're completely caught up with the team from the very beginning up to the point of this featured episode. Hooray! Although it's mostly kind of the same, there are a couple of differences from this team from the cartoon from the team in the comics. So in the cartoon, Charles Xavier was completely unaware that the government was making a mutant team, whereas in the comics, man, yeah, he knew about it, he was all for it. In fact, him and Cyclops convinced Havok to join X-Factor and lead the team. But still, everything else pretty much mostly the same, for what you really need to know from this cartoon episode. And with X-Factor's cartoon debut, you also have the cartoon debut of a number of other characters as well. So let us take a look at them. Let's start off with Havok, aka Alex Summers. He first appeared in X-Men number 54 in 1969. He is indeed the younger brother of X-Men leader Cyclops, aka Scott Summers, and that is why in the cartoon, when they were fighting each other with their powers, neither person's powers affected the other, because for some reason in Marvel Comics, mutant powers are powerless against siblings and stuff. Which, if you take it at face value, okay, yeah, I guess that makes sense. We don't know how mutation really works or what, it does when you shoot lasers out of your face, But on the other hand, how the hell does that work? Like, if you fight your brother and you punch him in the face, he's gonna feel it, But I digress, I guess. In this cartoon series, though, they do not know that they are actually brothers, at this point anyway, but Havok has the power to fire plasma bolts out of his body. Next up, we have Polaris, Lorna Dane, the love interest in this episode. She first appeared in X-Men number 49 in 1968. Her powers are very similar to that of Magneto, the master of magnetism. She does have control of magnetism and other similar things like that. Her powers aren't exactly like Magneto's, but close enough. And the reason for that is because she is the daughter of Magneto. So in the comics, Polaris and Iceman did indeed have a relationship. They both did leave the X-Men, and indeed Lorna wanted to get back into the fight. And as crazy as it sounds, yes, Iceman did quit the whole fight and he did become an accountant. But he did rejoin the fight when he co-founded X-Factor. But at that point, Polaris was basically with Havok, kind of on again, off again. So things were kind of moot, there for Iceman. Another new character being Multiple Man, Jamie Maddox. He first appeared in Giant Size Fantastic Four, number 4 in 1975. He has the ability to clone himself, basically, create a complete duplicate of himself that is also fully clothed for some reason, and that duplicate appears every time he gets hit. Wolfsbane, also known as Rain Sinclair, first appeared in the New Mutants graphic novel in 1982. She is basically a werewolf, right? Which is pretty cool. And she can change at will from her human form to her werewolf form, you know, so it's actually pretty awesome. And finally, Strong Guy, aka Guido? Something like that. He first appeared in The New Mutants number 29 in 1985. This big guy can rechannel kinetic energy into physical strength. The other X-Factor members already made their first cartoon appearance in other previous episodes somewhere or other, so we don't really need to talk about them. But with all this fun stuff, you are finally caught up with everything. From this point on, we don't really see much or anything of X-Factor, you know, outside of the comic books. Maybe a video game here and there, but that's pretty much it. It's kind of sad because they are actually a pretty cool team, you know? Maybe at one point we will, but we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, other than that, man, with this, that, those, and the other things, I guess that's that. Also, if you guys are interested, I created my own superhero show and I have the first episode out already. The Adventures of the Density. So if you guys would like to check it out, I'll have a link above here and a link at the end of the video for you to peruse there. Yeah, right on, and there you go. So thanks for watching the video. I hope you liked it as much as I did making it. Also, feel free to check out the source material that I featured in this video. And if you want to leave a comment on anything you may have liked or things I might have missed in this, you know, feel free to do so. Or anything else, you know, just to say hi. That's cool too. And other than that, you know, have a great day. Thanks.